Live. All right. Hey there, everyone. I am Joe Vassallo, and this is Kellie Ady, the Director of Instructional Strategy. It's a mouthful. We are leading a brand new version of what is previously known as the LEAP webinar series. We are going over to the Compass webinar series for Schoology. We're going to explain that to you a little bit, what we're doing with that, and why the brand change. Kellie's going to give us a lot of insight into a new program called Compass, which is very exciting, and it's going to be a great journey for you with improving instructional goals in Schoology. So back to that LEAP idea, you may have heard us call the webinar series previously LEAP. It gives the idea that we're kind of jumping forward without any direction, and we have gone in this new direction with Compass to give us goals and know where we're going before we just take a blind leap of faith. So we are going to cover that today. It's basically the same old format, but new. So old, but new. We're going to jump right into the agenda. Kellie is here. She's going to be directing some slides for us. We also are joined by Bridget Heaton, who is one of our wonderful marketing team members, and she will be addressing any questions that you guys have while this is going on. So feel free to go into the questions area and ask questions in there. She'll respond to those. We'll see if we have to call any of those out for other people to also hear. We'll also be posting some links throughout the webinar in that chat. So as we call out specific items in the webinar, you will be able to get access to the links, and we'll go through it. You'll see them as they come through, and we'll call out when they're going through. All right. So as far as the agenda, do you want to do an introduction, Kellie? Because I feel like I'm just going to talk a lot.
No, but I feel like we probably should address why we look.
That's a good point.
Surprised the questions that come out in the chat, like what is up? What's up with the similar sweaters? True story. I usually am not at headquarters. I work remotely in Denver, and I actually here this week. So I was in a meeting, and Joe happened to be working remotely at that point. So he saw me on camera, and he said, I was wearing this. He said, you know, you are dressing an awful lot like me these days. And I said, I'm not quite sure how to take that, but he said, you know, it's colder. I'm wearing sweaters. So he showed up to the office with this, and we've gotten so many questions. People are like, did you guys mean to dress alike? So we did. Yeah. So this was on purpose.
This is the second time I've worn this week. It's all right. I shower. All right.
Yeah.
So as far as our agenda, we're going to be going over a quick, in case you missed it, some product releases that we've done this year, some exciting stuff. Pretty much between our last webinar that you would have seen back in September or August timeframe, anything that's pretty much come out within that time frame that is great, which is anything that's come out is great. So we're going to go through that, just give you a quick glimpse. Then we're going to get deep into what Schoology Compass is, explain who it's for, what it is, and why we're going to use it, and how it's going to help you benefit as you go through it. We're also going to then take a look at where we're heading next. So things that, and next is a key word in there. So we're going to make some announcements about our user conference next for this year. Also some of the other events that we're going to be at, and then some exciting things about our roadmap updates, some things that you can look for upcoming in the next couple months or the remainder of the year, not this calendar year. Just want to get very clear about that.
Be very clear about that.
Because we've only got a little bit of time left there. All right, so we'll get right into the in case you missed it portion of this. Let me just so I can take a look here, jump down. So one of the, and truly I feel that this is a very exciting update for us, is printing assessments. As a self-proclaimed accessibility advocate, printing assessments is just something that we absolutely had to have. And outside of even accessibility, it's a good tool for a lot of things. A lot of different ways that we can use it. So it's going to be able to allow us to control how assessments are delivered to our students. If there's always going to be situations where a student has an accessibility or something in their IEP and accommodations necessary where they are not able to use a device for the assessment. I've had students when I was in the classroom that had concussions because every one of my students apparently owned a horse.
Our kids skied, but I get it.
So if you have concussions, you might not be able to take it. We could print those out. There's some other cool things that we could use this for. but that's definitely where that's geared for. And some more things to come with that when we go with some of the more product updates at the end of this. We'll explain how we can actually use some other features in tandem with this.
And I think one of the things this kind of gets to also is that closing the gap between what test quiz does and what course assessments do. So, you know, something that we're constantly thinking about is, you know, at some point test quiz will be going away, not this school year for sure, but we're bringing those two things closer and closer together. I think printing assessments was kind of a big deal. You could do it in test quiz. So now you can do course assessments.
And I don't know if we didn't mention feature options in here actually, but
no, that's true.
You know, one of the things about closing that gap between assessments and test quiz, assessments is still an opt-in feature. With the new Schoology user interface, there is a newer tab that's under your tools that's called feature management. It's actually tools, and then under school management it's going to be feature options. And so there's two options in there right now, which is section level overrides and enabling assessment creation. So if assessments isn't something that you're using right now, you can turn it on there. You will get this printing capability with it. A lot of organizations have decided not to turn that on because of those gaps. So with the printing there, it's another phase that we're dropping in with assessments. That's going to make it much more usable for the larger variety of students and teachers.
Right. So if you're a teacher and you don't see course assessments, it's probably because it's been, you know, turned off for your organization. So that's really a question for your system admin for Schoology. They're the ones that can enable that in that place that Joe was just talking about.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right.
So next big one is going to be Distractor Rationale. This is a assessment management platform, or AMP, as we like to call it here and everywhere. Just easier to say than assessment management platform, right? So the Distractor Rationale is a piece that you actually may have seen in assessments. It's going to provide explanations for why students may have answered questions incorrectly. So those distractors will have actual little boxes in there where you can put in that rationale for that. The important piece for this is, you know, for displaying the distractor rationale and multiple choice responses, the analysis report. So the important part about that is in Kelly and I were actually talking about this the other day. We have an author notes area inside of each question when you're authoring a question in AMP. Those author notes are really meant for the team that is developing that assessment, who's looking at the authoring capabilities within the team of those banks. But when it comes to reporting, I might not be on that team, and I want to look at the analytics, the item analysis, and I can get distractor rationales for why those assessment creators who created those items authored that question that way with that distractor, and why the students may have chosen that distractor.
Right.
Yeah. And another nice one is improved text highlighting for assessments. So you can see slightly a interesting example that we have here. I believe it is a Lord of the Rings example.
Fellowship of the Ring.
Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not a Lord of the Rings person. I'm more of a Harry Potter, Game of Thrones.
Okay.
I own all of the Lord of the Rings movies, but I fell asleep every single time I tried to watch them.
Okay.
So I'm sorry. This just doesn't speak to me as much.
But if it did, you could highlight.
I could highlight it. I could go in there and highlight in different colors too.
Yes.
So throughout the assessment, this will give students the ability to, particularly in passages like this, where, you know, this is something that we've all done with, you know, highlighters in real life,
right.
And we can do this in the assessment to highlight things. These highlights will actually stick throughout the assessment. So while they're taking that particular attempt, if they go to another question, they can come back and they're going to see that highlight if they need to review anything.
Right. So that's available in both course assessments and AMP. So if you had that question, this is in both. If the question comes up though, like, can a teacher see those highlights? This is really a student support tool. In the same way that we provide access to the calculator and the protractor just for students to use during the test, this is a similar feature to that. This is really just to support them as they're taking an assessment. So
yeah, not to be confused with the highlight text question type.
Correct.
There is a question type in AMP and assessments that is called highlight text. You put passages in there and you allow students to highlight, let's say, highlight all the verbs in the sentence.
Right.
We could do that. That's not going to be validated, these highlights that they're doing. This is for them to mark up that document so that they can recall some of the information that they think is important.
Right.
And then another big one, which is exciting, particularly because we don't necessarily see as many iOS updates as we do web updates, and we're working on getting a much nicer user interface that is more up to date with best current practices in mobile devices. This is specific to iOS at this point in time, but we have badges in iOS mobile now, so that's really exciting. A lot of people wanted that, and we listened. We heard you.
Yeah.
Well, not me. Our product team did. I just got to announce it to you guys on a webinar. And our new calendar view. And we were discussing this actually a day or two ago, and I'm a big advocate of the Schoology calendar. I think it's a great accountability tool. Yeah. It's a great organizational tool. Whenever I go into districts that are starting to use Schoology, if you're using the calendar, that's a great way to start. Just putting your assignments on there, letting students have that accountability tool for themselves, using that so they can hold themselves accountable for it. Parents can see what's going on. This view is much nicer, cleaner, easier to work with, and it has a lot more parity with the things that we have on web. Right. So this view is definitely something that will be beneficial to users on iOS.
Right.
All right, so that's our big product feature updates that we have right now that's come out since September. But since go ahead.
Well, we should mention that we're also going to talk about things we mentioned in the agenda that are going to be coming soon-ish. Mm-hmm. That'll be at the end of so if you're waiting to see what those are, gotta wait.
Yeah, we gotta hook you somehow. You gotta wait. Yeah, not all good things come right away. All right, so something else that has come out that's a lot of work has gone into this. It's really exciting for us to be able to announce this. It's part of this larger Compass identity that we have at Schoology now, is the Compass program. And so while we're here live from New York, I really wanted to say that. I had to say live from New York, this is Compass, because we are in New York, we are live, and
yeah,
I've always wanted to say it. I'm never going to be on SNL, so that's live from New York, this is Compass. So Kelly, again, our Director of Instructional Strategy, I said it right this time. Yeah. I just had to get it out, third time's a charm, is going to go through the Compass program, components of the Compass program, mm-hmm. And explain the benefit, the value, how it works, why we're implementing or bringing this in, and who really is going to benefit from it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn that over to Kelly, and we'll get moving along with that.
Okay, so biggest question probably is, what is Schoology Compass? Basically, it's a customer program. It's designed to support our customers as they work with us in Schoology. And part of that comes from a recognized need that we have, that districts often have strategic goals that they're trying to systematically address. And there are things that Schoology can really support you do if you have, and they're relatively common, things about, parent communities and student engagement, professional learning. So we basically have a program now that will help a district figure out the best way to leverage Schoology strategically to meet some of those goals. And, Joe and I were talking about, what does it mean to have a program? And we were talking about a weight loss program of what does that mean when you're in a program? And, it's really something you decide, you opt in to do, and you decide maybe you have a weight loss goal or a health goal. And maybe for me, I want to, we just had Thanksgiving. That's probably why I thought of it. But for me, I probably want to, maybe I want to lose a little bit of weight before I need to make a resolution in January. I'd rather not make the resolution. So if I join a weight loss program, I might have multiple options in how I tackle that. So, I might have a gym membership as part of that. I might change my diet as part of that. I might do something like, maybe I'd use a measurement tape to just, measure body changes. But if Joe did it,
it's going to be a lot different.
It is going to be a lot different.
Yeah.
So
I don't need it, though.
No, you don't need
Clearly.
it. Yeah. So the thing about having this designed as a program, it's designed to be basically a long-term kind of process to help districts really think strategically about these different areas in the same way that you would do a program for long-term change. It's really kind of what this is trying to address. I mentioned, a lot of districts have common goals, and what we have designed are things we're calling district success routes. And basically what those are there different options that a district can opt into to basically go through a program to figure out how they could more strategically leverage Schoology to address these 5 areas. And these 5 are the 5 that we're starting with. This doesn't mean that we're not going to make more down the road, but this was probably a really good set of things that we heard frequently coming from districts where they had a need to address something at a systems level. So we've got ongoing professional learning. So that's really how can you support those effective professional learning practices for your organization or district. We have a lot of folks that are involved in professional learning that also utilize Schoology. So how can we do that in a better way and use Schoology as the platform to really have that happen? Curriculum framework, how do you really effectively house and share curricular resources? And we're not just talking about scope and sequence documents, although that's super important as well, but then making that curriculum really come alive for the students that are supposed to be using that curriculum to really meet those standards and those student outcomes. Student-centered learning is another one. And I feel like this one, this goes by a lot of names right now. Like, we talk about personalized learning, we talk about differentiated instruction, this whole idea of making the focus of learning really on the student. So we want to think about how we could use Schoology to adopt that really strong student-centered learning approach that would better engage those learners. Assessment and feedback is another one. And it really, to me, I think, curriculum, content, and assessment really go together. And I feel like, we couldn't really address a curriculum framework or student-centered learning without having an assessment part of that conversation. So I think this is probably a good time to mention that these do overlap. I mean, there are things that kind of thread throughout all of these. But inside of assessment and feedback, a lot of schools and districts are looking at having a balanced assessment system. So how can that be leveraged better inside of Schoology? And then finally, engage parents and communities. We get the question a lot of how do we better engage parents. In fact, Joe and I were both at Next, and I did a session with one of our product engagement specialists, Mia, on involving parents. And it was a really highly attended session. I think it's something that's on a lot of people's minds. We have all these ways of communicating with parents, but it still is a need that we're just sometimes not reaching all of them or in a super effective way. So those are the 5 that we are developing currently. And the one that we started with and that we released already was ongoing professional learning.
So I have a question, a couple questions about this actually,
okay.
Which I imagine some other people might have those as well.
Okay.
With the routes that we have here, we see that there's 5. We've developed, or you've developed the OPL, the ongoing professional learning one.
Yeah.
And that was what we started with.
Right.
So all of these routes, are they being done at the same time? Is it one person going through them? Is it,
Good question. Like, who is this for?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it really depends. I think it depends on the size of your district. So, in some of our smaller districts, we have someone who wears a lot of hats. They may be in charge of professional learning and curriculum, and they also are the football coach.
It's like person in charge of random projects.
That's right. Exactly. So for those folks, they may be involved in multiple routes. Mm-hmm. In a larger district, you might have, a division or a department that's curriculum instruction. You might have another one, assessment and evaluation, or assessment and performance improvement, or something like that. You would probably want to have, your curriculum folks involved in the curriculum framework one. They may or may not need to be involved in assessment and feedback. I think that would really kind of depend on, who really owns that in your district. I think, though, that it's important to mention that you probably wouldn't want to do all these at once. Like when you said, like, so do you do all these? I mean, I would say that the more initiatives you have going, the less likely you are to do any of them well. And I think it's always a good idea to start with one and really tackle that one. And once you feel like that one's in a really good place and that you've made the changes you want to see, then maybe explore others, or maybe have 2 going if you have multiple departments that are tackling those. But again, we're looking more at like district level leadership who can actually affect change for some of those structures that are in place.
Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of reminded as you're talking, saying change begets change. So as we're going through one of these routes, that's going to change some things that might affect or impact other routes. Right?
Exactly.
So depending on the size of the district, depending on who's available, what your human power is there, that's going to determine what you're doing and what you're taking on first. One other question I have about this, specifically about the route that's currently available, the OPL, the ongoing professional learning, which if you hear me say OPL, that's what we're referring to. A big fan of acronyms.
Yes.
8.5 years in the Marine Corps. I spent a lot of time learning acronyms, and in education alphabet soup.
Yeah.
So that's just our life. So OPL, ongoing professional learning.
Yeah.
Why did we start there?
I I think that ongoing professional learning is probably the linchpin to all of these. So there's no way you can address anything that is going to be changed in terms of student performance or student learning or teaching practices without professional learning. So our thought was, let's start with one that we really feel like is critical to all of the DSRs. Again, another acronym. So all the district success routes are going to involve some level of professional development, professional learning. And I think the other thing is, when we think about, we get a question a lot about what do successful districts do? I would say that our most successful districts leverage Schoology professional learning because it models for teachers what they could then do in their classrooms. And so it's something that's super important, I think, to us as a company, is like, how do we really share what solid practices are? I'm really hesitant to use the term best practices because I feel like what's best for one may not be best for somebody else, but maybe a thoughtful practice. How do you replicate that? And ongoing professional learning, we thought, was probably the best way to start that.
Yeah. And with you saying that what's best for one is not best. I mean, it's the same going back to that weight loss program idea.
Right.
What's good for me for diet wise may not be good for you, or the way I lift weights or the exercises I might do are not going to necessarily be good for you, or the things that I work on I might already be strong in and neglecting other areas.
Right.
So this is, I would imagine, a lot of thought that needs to be put into, careful thought that needs to be put into who's doing this, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it.
Right.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to the next one here. Question that's going to come from, or that's I think leads into this, is how do we progress through these? How do we know where we are? How do we know where we need to go? Because that's what really, when I hear compass, again, 8 years in the Marine Corps, I love compasses. I have them. Actually bought a Lensetta compass off of Amazon so I could, play around. Yeah, I'm weird.
Okay.
But how do I know where I am with this, and how do I set my goals? How do I know what my objectives are, and how to get there?
Well, so part of it is, we really wanted to leverage the platform for people to actually engage with the district success routes. So, and we'll show you what this looks like in a minute, but every one of these district success routes is basically a Schoology course that is self-paced. And so you would go through that particular district success route, and it's self-paced, but it also has things that you modify and can do on your own to go back to this idea of like, what's best for one isn't best for all. You may have a goal that's really specific to your district. We'd like you to work towards that goal. We're certainly not going to tell you what that should be. But we provide you, I think, some tools and some supports to help you maybe think about how you could do that inside of Schoology. So, but another thing that really, I think, goes strongly into,
there we go.
Is that
There's
okay?
a little delay.
A little delay, yeah. One thing that goes into our thought process here is moving from a entry level of where we're just really starting with this inside of Schoology to really innovating. We want to, let people think about what are the natural steps of where do we start and how do we get there. And so we kind of have these levels that we have outlined inside of these district success routes of entry, emerging, implementing, which actually is an umbrella for two different things of integrating and adopting. And then that innovative level, that's, really the goal. We really want to think about how you do that and do it well. And so everything inside of Compass is really around change model. So at the foundation of all of these is really an approach to change, because no matter what you're trying to tackle, change is going to be the thing that's the constant. So when we think about like change model, there's a lot that are floating around out there, and a lot of them are really good. In fact, in the business world, you can, if you just search for change theory or change model books on Amazon.com, you'll come up with a bunch of them. We really like the concerns-based adoption model. It's a research-backed model that's actually out of education. And that's something I like about it, because the research that was done was in education. It wasn't about the business world. And there are some valuable things that you can learn from looking at some of those resources from the business world. I use a lot of them, but sometimes the context just doesn't fit. It's back to that, the best practice for business may not be the best practice for education. So the concerns-based adoption model is the framework for all of the DSRs, and you kind of see it here. It has three different dimensions of change. The first one of those is defining exactly how you think of innovation. What does innovation look like? How would you configure that? And so there's something called an innovation configuration map, and we share some of those. I'll give you a quick example. Then another dimension of change is actually the very personal change that people that are undergoing change will naturally go through. And there are 7 of them, and it's something that's really thoughtful in terms of, as a leader, where will people maybe stumble and get stuck, and how can I actually help them get past that? Then the third dimension is actually about monitoring levels of use. Like, once you have put something in place and you've thought about stages of concern, how do you know that people are using it and that it's actually making a difference? So that's also embedded inside of each of those district success routes. So, and I'll show you exactly kind of how this works. We'll actually jump in the course in a second, but just know that there was actually some thought put into the progression of, like, how do you move from one thing to the other? So,
awesome.
Yeah. The first dimension of change I talked about, which was the innovation configuration maps. Each of the district success routes has a sample set of these that we've created. So this one happens to be a snapshot of ongoing professional learning. So what we did is we took the standards from Learning Forward, and if you haven't heard of Learning Forward, it's probably the organization around professional learning. It used to be called the National Staff Development Council, or NSDC, and they changed their title. I'm not sure how long ago that was, but these are Learning Forward standards. So we took each one of those and we thought about how would those happen in Schoology, and how could people see, like, what entry might be for a particular one of these standards all the way through to innovating. So we share that. And then we also, in the stages of concern area, think about how could you use stages of concern to be thoughtful about a communication strategy about that change and what you're doing with Schoology, because it's going to be something new, or there's going to be things that are changing. So we have some examples here of, like, these different stages, which are on the left, of awareness all the way down through refocusing. How do we need to shift our communication plan around where people might be for those different stages of concern?
With communication plans.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for these usually?
Well, again, I think that depends on the district. There are some districts that actually have a communication department that manages a lot of things, although, in some districts that really is only outbound. So it's like community sharing or community communication. It might include internal communication. I think I've seen that less. I think that in other districts that don't have a communication department, it kind of falls on, various individuals, or, email distribution lists. Or I think that that's a challenge for a lot of districts, is how do we communicate, wisely and using the tools to the best of our ability. So,
well, and both of us in our roles at Schoology have been all over the country, different schools, have been in really large districts, very, very, very small ones, where you have one person that is the social studies department, and they don't have communication teams. So a lot of times those individuals will come to us and say, do you have anything that can get us started?
Right.
Do we have anything that we're providing, or?
Actually, each of the district success routes, because it has a phase that really addresses this, our marketing team is actually providing some templates and samples that district could just take and use if they don't have that resource. And that's an area, I think, we've shared some things publicly, like parent letters. I think we have something we've shared there, but this will be really tailored to each of these district success routes to help a district think about, like, oh, good, here's a good example of a flyer I could send out, and then they can modify it and use it if they want to. So
shout out to our great marketing team.
The last level, the last dimension of change is the levels of use. And there's a whole protocol that the quote unquote real CBAM model adopts, which is an interview protocol. And that's powerful. But one thing I really also like is Thomas Guskey's work around evaluating staff development. And he talks about the 5 levels of data. So inside of each of the district success routes, we try to think about, how would we measure this? What kinds of data could we gather along the way to make sure that we are really reaching our goals and getting to where we want to go? And I think the thing that is most important to recognize is that this is not a short-term thing. When you're talking about system-wide change, this can take a while. So also being thoughtful about, at what point would you actually gather this data? Because some of it you can't gather early on inside of an implementation because it's just too early. So thinking, about that as well. So that's part of it. And then underpinning all of this, if you think about that idea of a long-term change, think about cycles of continuous improvement. A lot of districts use something called the Deming cycle. It's the Plan, Do, Study, Act, or PDSA. The district I was in kind of thought about that as plan, teach, monitor, adjust. We also at Schoology think about that also as plan, engage, monitor and adjust as well. Like, how do we then move from where we are with current state to all the way around back to where we can actually modify? So what we did was, in each of these modules that are inside of a district success route, the screen cap you see here is actually from the ongoing professional learning course. That red folder at the top is all about current state. How do I figure out where I am now? We have a diagnostic that you can take inside of there that will give you a level that helps you figure out where are you starting. Because as you said, Joe, like, I need to know where am I now and where am I going and how do I get there? So that red folder is all about figuring out where you are now so that you can really thoughtfully approach how you get to where you want to go. So then when we get to the plan stage, that's really in that second folder, or the module 2, that orange folder. That's about planning, and that's planning around stages of concern. It's planning around training. It's planning around your communication strategy, and then also engaging folks that you need to engage. So it's going to be different stakeholders. If you're talking about professional learning, you may have some PD facilitators that are going to be the ones that are really in the trenches, so to speak, with doing professional learning. They're going to be part of that really involved stakeholder group. If you're talking about parent communities, well, that's a whole different set of folks. So you need to think about, who are you going to engage? So that's part of that second module. That third module, which is the yellow folder, is about that monitoring, that levels of use, those levels of data. How do we know how we're doing? How do we chart that progress? And then finally, what changes do we need to make? Once we have gone through some of these iterations, where do we need to revisit and tweak some things? And that's when you could go back and actually take that diagnostic again back in the current state folder and see if the progress is made that you want to make. So, the assessment that we've built, that's actually, you can take that multiple times. It's not designed to be like a which office personality are you? Like, just keep taking it till you get Stanley. I'm just kidding.
Kelly.
I don't know. I took it and I was Daryl, and I was super happy with that.
That's
I was very, very frightful of being Angela. So
I feel like I don't even want to get into it.
Okay. So anyway, so the diagnostic is really designed for you to take it, try some things out, make some changes, put some things in place. And as we said, this is a cycle of continuous improvement. That means that it isn't necessarily something you finish, within 4 weeks or finish within 4 months even. It depends on how vast that change is going to be. So really, when you think about these district success routes, think about that under that lens of cycles of continuous improvement.
So I'm hearing systematic and iterative. Really.
Yes,
right.
Yeah. I'm glad you heard that.
Approach.
Yeah. So in fact, why don't we go ahead and take a look at what the course looks like? And this is the ongoing professional learning course. And again, as I said, we really are leveraging our platform to do this. And we are actually viewing this course as our own fabulous Bridget Heaton. So this is how the course looks to Bridget. So when you first get in, you'll see, some kind of a welcome video that gives you a little bit of overview. And then here are those folders that I talked about just now. That idea of figuring out what your current state is, that's module 1. And I'll just expand that folder real quick. When you get into module 1, you'll see that we've got some direct instruction maybe about what those professional learning standards are. We've got those sample IC maps, those kind of rubric looking things that I showed earlier that show you going from integrating or from entry to innovating. And then you see the ongoing professional learning diagnostic. So that's built in our own course assessment tool. So when you take that assessment, it actually gives you a result, and that's based on those levels. So let's pretend that I'm Bridget.
I'm going to go ahead and turn off the webcam here just so we get a larger view of the screen too.
Yeah.
And you guys don't have to look at me anymore.
And both of our sweaters?
Yes.
Yeah. So if I go into this ongoing professional learning diagnostic, and this is part of the, that assessing your current state, you'll notice here that at the very, very bottom, Bridget has taken this assessment and it tells her you are integrating. So what does that mean? We have descriptions of exactly what those different levels kind of indicate. And what we then do is we've also tied all of these questions in the assessment to those professional learning standards. And so if I wanted to actually take a deeper dive and say, okay, so it's integrating, what exactly does that mean in terms of the different pieces of that assessment? Each of those questions, or the clusters of questions, have been tied to different standards. So when you look at mastery inside of that district success route, you'll see where you scored on these different standards from professional learning, and these are from learning forward. So you can kind of ascertain where you may have a need. So if I'm looking at this for Bridget, I can see that, and this is, based on a 0 to 5 scale. So Bridget would say, oh, look, looks like I need to really work on having leadership involved in professional learning, because that's the one that seems to be a little bit lower than the others. The highest one here, tie between resources and outcomes, but that might give her a focus point. So when we go back into the course, and let me go back into just the course as a whole, after you have that kind of idea of where you're starting, you'll notice that there's then opportunities for you to create a goal. So what do you want to do with professional learning? Knowing now where you started and where you have those different standards areas, what would your goal be for professional learning? And then there's a reflection. The second module, kind of a similar idea, in that all of the resources are housed inside of Schoology. There are some learning activities about what stages of concern are, and then there's the ability and the chance for you to go ahead and create a communication plan. And then also think about a logic model. What kind of training do you need to bring in, and what kind of resources will you need for ongoing professional learning? And then actually, Joe asked us earlier, what about resources, that we could use for communication? I mentioned that our marketing team has put together some resources there, so there's a folder for those. And then inside of module 3, that again is talking about levels of use. How do we gauge those different levels of use with the folks that we're trying to really impact? In this case, if it's ongoing professional learning, our end user we want to impact is the teacher taking those courses. If we're talking about student-centered learning, it's going to be the students. So we have, again, some direct instruction, some learning about what exactly that means, and then thinking about creating that evaluation framework plan. When do I want to gather data from who, and what type of data should I gather to see how I'm doing? After you are going through these different modules, you might then get to module 4, which is where you can decide where you want to go next. You may want to go back and take the diagnostic again after you put some things in place. See if there are areas that you hope to impact that have been impacted. If you are at the innovating stage and you really feel solid with where you are with that, you might want to go into another district success route. So we have a link to go back and maybe join another course, and those will be coming out relatively soon, the remaining 4, and again, OPL is the one that we have available now. We also have supporting resources inside, so that if you want to read some articles and see kind of where we pulled some of this, you totally can. I think the thing to also point out here, and Joe, you asked us about who should be involved. When you are at a larger district, it may help if you involve other people in that diagnostic. So let's say, for example, you're taking the diagnostic for ongoing professional learning, and there's a question in there that really relates to a different team. You may want to then, and you can always, in that assessment, resume it later. So you can always come back. Like, you don't have to complete the assessment when you first start it. You might want to take it as a group. We've gotten lots of questions just from OPL about, can I share this? Can I share this with my colleagues, or can I get my director involved? Absolutely. There are ways to actually get them into the course with you as well, because some of this might really be a team approach. And so, don't feel like you have to go at this alone. We want anyone in here that really wants to learn more about how they can leverage these things inside of Schoology to really meet some of those goals and needs. So, yeah, so every one of the district success routes will have a very similar structure. They're all going to have resources to support those particular areas. They're all going to have a diagnostic assessment. They're all going to have a way for you to find out how you're doing. In fact, when you take that assessment, in addition to seeing that level for the assessment overall, you'll also get something from us that is just an email that says, hey, we saw you took the diagnostic. Here's what we have. And I think one thing I really need to point out in module 2 is that we have guidance and recommendations by level. So, once you get that email from us and your level, it's really worth it to really go back into the course, not just because you probably want to think about the next steps, but if let's say I was Bridget and I took this and I'm integrating, I might want to view what those recommendations are for how should I move forward. So if I click on I click on that, and that's actually, I built that in ThingLink. Here's a list of all the different things you might want to try for those different standards to move to that next level. And if you go to the next page, what that shows you is, are there some things that Schoology offers or can provide for you that would also support you in that work? So each of these levels have, kind of a 2-page document on how can I move ahead and how can I change the level that I'm in and impact what we're doing. So that's the Compass story. I'm sticking to it.
So if I use it, I can lose weight.
Yeah. Yes.
One of my favorite things about this is, I've been in Schoology for 3 years and was in classroom for 5 years before that.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is with working with so many districts around the globe and in Schoology is, hey, do you guys have stuff that can get us to where we need to go? Or
right.
do you know where we should go? And the answer really is tough because there is no best practice for everyone.
Right.
It's very customizable, and it goes back to that weight program analogy.
Yeah.
This is giving you that direction or helping you discover that direction.
Right.
And helps give you checkpoints along the way.
Right.
So you're not alone on an island trying to move a mountain.
Right.
And you can do this with a team. So I really like that there's something that helps us systematically work through this.
Yeah. So we're really excited. We've gotten some really great feedback from people that have already been in, some really insightful comments that have come out from our users about, and I remember somebody saying, and actually I got this question, I just have a brief shout out to the On Education podcast. I was on there last week talking about Compass, and one of the questions I got from Mike and Glenn was, what feedback are you getting from the community? And in the reflection area, there's a chance for people to actually talk about their biggest aha moment. And somebody mentioned that their biggest aha moment was, I didn't realize how important it was to involve leadership. And I've been trying to do this alone. I really need to think about how we can better involve leaders in this. Somebody else said their biggest aha moment was that they realized that when they were doing professional learning, they didn't necessarily have a goal that was clear for teachers. So teachers would come to a training and be like, I don't even know why I'm here. And so while this is about using Schoology systematically and more strategically, I think it's also about just being what are just some good things to think about? And, the fact that people had, that kind of feedback for us, that's great. So, yeah. So I know we need to move on to where we're going to be next. So if you've got other questions about Compass, feel free to put them inside of the chat area. And
all right, so I'm going to go ahead and take over control. We'll take a look at those questions as I'm bringing up the screen here. So everyone should see my screen at this point. Go away. Okay, so we have some announcements about where we're going to be, maybe not me personally, but where we as a company are going to be physically in the coming months. So why is that not working? There we go. All right, so we will be at FETC down in Orlando, Florida from January 27th to 30th. We'll have a booth there, so feel free to stop by. If you're presenting, let us know. We want to get to meet you. We want to get to see you. So absolutely reach out to us. You can connect with us. The best way to probably connect to us at this point is at Schoology on Twitter. So if you're going to let us know that you're there, just at Schoology on Twitter is the best way to do that. TCEA as well, February 4th through 8th in Austin, Texas. Wish I could go to that. Love Austin. Same thing. If you want to connect with us, we'd love to see you. Come over to our booth. If you're presenting, let us know. At Schoology on Twitter. Next thing we got is Say the Date. Very exciting.
Very
July,
exciting.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Especially with a lot of Florida going on right now.
I know.
Back in Boca, I haven't been down there in many years.
This is probably the biggest question we've been getting from people is when and where is next? Yeah.
And I want to be very clear. This is not in Miami. It's in Boca Raton. All right. So down in Boca, 9 through 12 July of 2019. Save that date or dates. It's going to be awesome. The biggest part of this announcement is actually that calls for speaker proposals are now open. So Bridget on the end here is going to be sending out a link so that you can submit your proposals for presenting. Please do it. We love having you guys present. And any of you that have been at Next know that you love seeing each other present. So that's you don't want to listen to us all the time. So absolutely submit those proposals. Very excited to see you guys down there in July. All right. So let's take a quick look at product updates. I know everyone's probably at this point very concerned about how do I get involved with Compass? Well, you still got to wait. You got to wait, right? You got to slow down a bit. We want to give you some product updates. Then we'll give you some information on how to get into the Compass program. All right, so this is going to tie in with our printing of assessments. We will be able to enter observational grading in our assessment platform. That's going to be able to incorporate paper responses from those printed assessments into the assessment. So a teacher will be able to, or any educator will be able to go into that assessment and score or record the data that a student may have recorded on a paper assessment. Also works for performance assessments. If I am any teacher, I'll use the example of elementary. If I'm an elementary teacher and I'm visually observing a student perform a task, I can record that data for them. So a lot of great ways that you can use that.
I'm super excited about this one. I mean, you can do some of this to some degree now with an offline assignment but I mean, if it's part of other parts of an assessment, you need that data together. And I'm just thinking about how important that those performance tasks are against rubrics. So I'm very excited about this one.
Yeah. When I heard this was coming out, I was pumped.
Yeah.
And I'm actually talking to Kelly a lot about, well, could we use it this way? Could we use it that way? So, well, it's part of the fun.
Yeah.
Course assessment reporting. This is going to be awesome. It's not right now in assessments. One of those, because it's a phase where it's an opt-in still, and we're introducing things in phases. We don't have analytics, item analysis on assessments. We are going to be able to get great item analysis and analytics on our assessments, and we'll be able to see how each student did on those assessments. Anything else you want to add to that?
I think that this is another one that I'm really super excited about. And I think that, you mentioned earlier that there are some organizations that have held off on turning on course assessments. And the feedback I've gotten is some of it has to do with the data availability that's in course assessments. And they work really well right now for, checks for understanding or things where a student needs to go back because they can see their own. But I think this is going to be awesome. Yeah. Again, getting that gap between test quiz and course assessment getting even narrower and narrower. So. And
it looks so much cooler than what we have right now. So kudos to our design team as well for what's coming out with that.
Absolutely.
It's just beautiful looking. All right, average score comparison reports in AMP. So we're going to have average comparative reports in specific schools, how specific schools can compare the district average. And we can look at, I think that goes without saying, comparatively look at students across different schools within the district.
Yeah.
Which will give you more insight. And that's, we one of the things that I love about Schoology and our assessments and AMP is the data. Forever I've been hearing data-driven insight, data-driven instruction, and a lot of it's been lip service throughout my time in education. And I'm sure for you, a lot more, twice more of my experience. And
I wasn't sure where you're going with that. I wasn't sure you said twice as old as I am, because that was going to be shaky ground.
2 years apart.
Oh, yeah, okay. You just saved it.
Yeah. But in your time in education, I think that's something that we're always hearing, but not something that is actually being addressed very, very well because of the lack of the access to the tools that show us how to do it.
Right.
So with this data insight, we can actually really start making those data-driven instructional changes. And super cool, super cool. Simplified login, QR codes. We will be able to establish QR codes for individual users that they can use to log into their Schoology environment. No memorization, no typing required. Need I say more?
I think that's pretty simple.
I hope there are cheers. People are popping champagne on the other end of the webinar. It's a really exciting move. Ooh, should I have gone there yet? I just went to the next slide. That's our product our upcoming product updates.
Yeah.
I guess the next slide that we have here is actually a compass.
Oh yeah. So one of the things we want to make sure that we were clear about, we just talked about Compass, and for those of you who are like, okay, so what do I do? How do I get in? We actually have a website that is dedicated actually to Schoology Compass, and Bridget's going to put that in the chat area if she hasn't already, so that you can just jump there quickly. But it's also on the slide, schoology.com/compass. Basically, what happens is you enroll in Compass, and remember, think about this as a program. And then once you enroll in Compass, you're going to get the option to choose one of those district success routes. And what will happen is you will, there's a process where we go through and match you to your district so that we, basically, and make sure you get the right information. You'll get a join code to then join that Schoology, that DSR, that district success route course. So each course will have its own unique join code. And what we ask is, if you do want to have other people in your district also join that, because they may be partnering with you or part of a team that's tackling one of these DSRs, have them go through this process as well, so that they can get that join code also. That also helps us have a better understanding of the people that are in there, kind of, how many people we have from a certain district, and it's just kind of good visibility for us. We've gotten a lot of questions like, can I share the join code? We'd rather have you share the website with them and have them actually log in and sign up there. So that's the process. And then, once you get in, like I said, it's really kind of self-paced, with, some guides along the way, and we'll be adding, more things to those courses, especially in terms of resources and things that we can put in there. So even after you get in there, and if you take that, you take that diagnostic and you go through some things, we will be constantly, remember, a cycle of continuous improvement. We'll be continuing to improve those and to add more resources as we go along. Okay, so we've got some time for Q&A. So Bridget's flagged a couple for us. One of them is grading by question. Is grading by question coming soon? That actually is, I think, on the product roadmap. Grading by question. I think that is, I know it's on the roadmap. I'm not sure what the timeline is.
We just had a discussion about it.
I know.
I'm trying to
yeah,
rewind my my memory here.
So our short answer is it is on the roadmap. Is it coming soon? Yes.
Yes.
I'm not sure how soon. I know that there's like certain things that they have to develop ahead of time. There's like a sequence of things that are almost like dependencies.
Yes.
So grade by question, I will tell you that has been a big request. Another one of those parity items between test quiz and course assessments. So I would say that, take a look at our product roadmap page that's in support.schoology.com. Because what it will show you there are things that are, on the roadmap, things that are currently, in development, and then things that have been released. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. And it is coming.
And it is coming.
Yeah.
The other one that came up, and this is from, Peter from St. Paul. Hi, Peter. Will QR codes work with our district's Active Directory login? That's a great question that I actually don't know how to answer. I'm not sure what the mechanism is behind what those QR codes are. So rather than give you bad intel, I'm going to say I actually don't know, but I happen to know your product engagement specialist. So we will pass that along and have them follow up with you on that one, Peter, because I don't know. I just know that that's going to be very cool. What about teachers being able to write in answers on assessments, for example, a running record? Writing answers. I'm assuming, this is from Jamie. I assume that Jamie's asking about annotation. I haven't heard anything about that in terms of something that's in dev for assessments. Yeah. And I don't think we can do that currently in test quiz anyway. And I think we're focusing really on, let's get those things the same before we start adding enhancements that are above and beyond. But I haven't heard anything. I don't know if you've heard anything, Joe.
And I wonder if that's geared towards the observational grading piece.
Maybe.
I'd be more interested to talk with Jamie about that.
Yeah, that's another one. Like, what are you trying to do? Mm-hmm. Like, what kind of a situation you're talking about?
And
yeah,
if it's the Jamie I'm thinking of, Jamie, you could reach out to me. We can discuss that.
Okay, so let's see here. She did respond again about that it had to do something with annotating on assignments. Students need to be able to annotate on assignments. I see that's from April. Interesting. Okay. That's something we can give to feedback to the product team. Like I said, I haven't heard specifically about that one. So All right. Well, we are almost at the top of the hour. If there are any other things you want to add or ask, you can always talk to us on social media. Just tweet us at Schoology, and our marketing team is always available via social media. We really want to thank you guys for joining us today, talking a little bit about Compass, seeing some stuff that's coming down the road, seeing Joe and I wearing matching sweaters. So
we're going to color, if we do it again, we'll have to color coordinate each one.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know how many, I may have to go shopping now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We can go together.
Yeah, totally. Oh, and also this was being recorded. That question came up in the chat area. This will be recorded, so you will be getting an email with a link to the recording, so you can live the magic again, should you choose to do so. Okay.
Thanks for joining.
All right. Thanks for joining. Happy almost Friday, everyone.